Hello and welcome to a live Deprogrammed with Keri Smith. I'm your host, Keri. It's good to see you guys. Good to see some familiar faces. Hello, Therese, Rosa, Kendra. Hey, Dion, Queen of Quotes. I hope you're having a great Friday. If you're in Texas, it's beautiful. We're finally, I think, knock on wood, I think we're finally past like the deep cold. We kept going back to the deep cold, and I'm glad we're past it. Um, Thank you for being here. If you like the show, please hit like. I sometimes forget to say those things. Also, if you want to support the channel, we have a subscribe star. We have a Patreon, a locals, or you could support here at YouTube or on Rumble with Rumble Rants. We also simulcast on Rumble. Um, Today is Friday, February 28th. And I don't know if you know this, but the leftists, you may not know this if you're not in their circles anymore, the leftists today are having an economic boycott. Now, you you may not, again, you may not have heard this. It doesn't seem to be getting a lot of media attention, which is funny. Things seem really different to me since Trump won. Do they seem different to you? Seems like some of their histrionics on the left don't get as much attention as they used to. The media is a little bit different. Look at this. Robert Reich, he's one of the people participating in it, and they're calling it, this is a Al Sharpton's pushing it as well. They're calling it a DEI economic boycott, but the messaging is all over the place. What they mean by that is not that they're protesting DEI, but they are angry at the corporations that have removed the DEI brainwashing from their new hiring practices and from corporate trainings with employees. So they're angry at a lot of companies that they think have abandoned their racist DEI nonsense, their racist discrimination in hiring that they want to see, their racist brainwashing that they want to see in the corporate environment. So they're targeting a lot of those companies. So here, this is Robert Reichs. His says, no Amazon. I just love how dramatic this is. He right, it's written like it's so dramatic. Just wait till you get to the end. Listen, no Amazon, no Walmart, no Target, no Disney, no Google, no Apple, no Visa or MasterCard, and especially no Facebook. By the way, he posted this on Facebook yesterday. This is a Facebook post. And especially no Facebook. I will not be posting on Meta platforms for the next 24 hours. 24 hours, guys. I will not. For the next 24 hours in support of the economic blackout. I just thought this was stinking hilarious because it's written like it's just such a sacrifice for him to, not only for him, it's such a sacrifice for to give up Facebook for 24 hours. Can you imagine? But that also it's he's taking something away from us, the little people. No, what will we do without your post for 24 hours? How will we make it through one day without your post, Robert Reich? I don't know. Like it's just so uh it's just so funny. Therese says, I will never forget how Rush Limbaugh used to say his name. I don't know how he used to say his name. I actually don't even know if I'm pronouncing his name right. He's someone from the left that I continued to follow after I left the woke left cult. I continued to follow him because I thought, I now have changed my mind, but I used to think he had good intentions and some good ideas, and I wanted to make sure I kept him in my online circle of thinkers or people who, I don't even know if he's a thinker anymore, but people who were sharing ideas and perspectives. And so I still follow him on Facebook. That's how I saw that. That's how I saw his hysterical, dramatic, I'm taking a 24-hour break from Facebook. Okay. Robert Reisha. That's how he said it, Therese. Robert Reisha. I don't know if that's how you actually pronounce it, but um okay, so today's topic, I don't know about you guys, but there's so much to say. If you're on X, a lot of it's manufactured, this whole like news cycle, how there's always news stories and new things to be outraged on. You know this, social media is like this. And there's been so many different things. And I was thinking, what could I talk about today that's important to me? The Epstein files were supposed to come out yesterday. They teased us with that. And instead they had a lot of influencers, people with podcasts or big X accounts or things like that, go to the White House, and then they gave them a binder that was called like the Epstein files binder. And they all like, it was like a photo op kind of. I guess there's a lot of people criticizing the people who were invited or who had pictures taken. And I can understand the criticism, but I can also understand the position of getting an invitation to the White House and going there wanting to be a part of this, and not, I feel bad for them too, that they were in these photos that made them look kind of, I don't know, non-serious, I guess, is what people are criticizing. They're also criticizing that in the binders, there wasn't any new information really. So the Epstein files were not released. And they're criticizing the fact that it was given to influencers rather than just being put online for the public, like a press conference for the public to say, here's the Epstein files with transparency. We're releasing everything. Instead, they hand selected these influencers. So I guess some people are upset about that. I don't really care about all that. I just care about, eventually, I hope they do release the files. And I saw that Pam Bondi has sent a letter to the FBI in New York, because apparently the FBI in New York is hiding a lot of the files or trying to destroy a lot of the Epstein files. And so that letter went out yesterday, where she's basically demanding that they turn these things over. And I saw Kash Patel is also issuing statements and saying, we will prosecute anybody who's destroying this evidence and things like this. So it just seems like a big cluster F. And I hope they get something. I'm not getting my hopes up, but I hope they get something out of it and they're able to release this and to the public. And I figured it was already destroyed anyway. Didn't you guys think the Epstein files have already been, that we'll never see that? So anyway, that happened yesterday, and I wasn't that involved in that, and in watching the people criticizing the influencers and the influencers defending this, whatever. What was more interesting to me was this whole Andrew Tate thing. The Tate brothers, as you know, you may or may not know, they're awaiting trial. They're facing charges, criminal prosecution. They're awaiting trial in Romania for charges related to sex trafficking, including sex trafficking of minors. One of the women involved was a girl at the time, was 15 years old at the time. Sex trafficking, sexual abuse, rape, and other charges. And despite what you may think, it's so weird, because when I talk about this on social media, people who are not as perpetually online, which is a good thing, right? I always like to gauge what have they heard about it, because that tells me what propaganda is getting out there, right? Or if the true facts are getting out there or not. And so I had some friends who I love, and who one of them was like, I thought the charges were dropped. And I'm like, wow, that's what's getting out there. That means that the Tate brothers have been successful in pushing that bullshit. The charges were not dropped. The charges have never been dropped. And Andrew Tate, like a sociopath, thinks if he just tweets that often enough and says that often enough, that a certain number of people will believe it. And he's right. That's what cult leaders do. This is what sociopaths and con artists do. It is shocking to normal people. We're like, how could they just bold-faced lie like that? And they don't care. There's no shame. They don't have any shame about doing it. They don't care that it's an obvious lie that anyone can look and say, that's just like factually not true. The charges have not been dropped. They don't care. They just say it, and they know that if they just say it enough times, they can say anything and people will believe it. If they're good at it, people will believe it. And so I had people responding saying, I thought the charges were dropped. No, the charges have not been dropped. And they were on house arrest for a while. Then they had travel restrictions awaiting trial. Now, some people are saying, well, this is, they have a right to a speedy trial, so that, they were arrested and these charges are brought against them at the end of 2022. It's not fair that it's taken this long. Yes, they also have a right to file appeals, which is what they've been doing, which is why it's been taking so long. That's within their right to do. I wish they weren't doing it. I would rather they go right to trial, but they have a right to drag it out as long as they want, which is what they've been doing with appeals. That's why it's taking so long. So these guys have been awaiting trial since the end of 2022, and Romania just out of the blue released them, lifted their travel restrictions while they await trial. So previously they couldn't travel out of the country. Well, Romania, the prosecutor, this is what's super weird and fishy. The prosecutor lifted these travel restrictions. It didn't even have to go through a judge. Why would the prosecutor do that? Well, all the media is reporting that someone from Trump's administration, someone from Trump's team put pressure on the Romanian government. Specifically, I think they're talking about Richard Grenell put pressure on the Romanian government. Now, take that with a grain of salt, because it's the media saying it, and I don't trust the media. You shouldn't trust the media. What my gut is that yes, someone on Trump's team pressured Romania. We can look through the news reports about it. I'll read some of it to you. But my gut, I'll just tell you, yes, I think someone from Trump's team pressured them. I don't necessarily think Trump himself knew anything about it. And in fact, people caused such a stink yesterday, and I'm so glad for this. People on X, that Trump's team watches, they read social media and stuff. They're more plugged into social media than any previous administration. Look, they brought influencers in yesterday for the Epstein files, quote unquote, release. They listen. And so I'm very happy that there were enough people, enough Trump voters who said, this is BS. This is BS. These guys are predators. Why are we trying to do special favors for them? And there were enough people that said that Trump ended up issuing a statement and saying he didn't know anything about this. He was going to get to the bottom of it. And I think that's great. So it's a good example of why it's important to say something when you have a criticism, raise it. One of the things I said yesterday was, shame on Trump if this is true. At the beginning of the day, shame on him if this is true, if he let someone in his administration put this pressure on Romania to let these guys go. And then I had to add a caveat, because we live in such weird times. Here's the caveat. This in no way does it mean that I regret my vote for Trump. That's ridiculous to me. Of course I don't regret my vote. Of course I don't. Of course I would not rather have a Marxist, communist, woke identity Marxist in the office. Of course I would not rather have Kamala Harris in there pushing identity Marxism, continuing to push it on the country, continuing to mutilate and sterilize children to support doing those things. But of course I don't want that. So some people are like, there's leftists who are like, oh, look, criticism means that you're not on, you regret your vote. No, it doesn't. Not at all, honey. No buyer's remorse. It doesn't mean that at all. You would only think that if you're in a cult like you guys on the left are. In a normal world, before we forgot what normalcy is like, in a normal world, you're allowed to, imagine that you're allowed to, and you're also, it's healthy to have criticism. Of course, you're not going to agree with every decision. You shouldn't. If you do, it means something might be a little bit wrong. Like you might be in a worshiping stance of a politician, right? Or you might be in a cult. Your party or your side might have cult characteristics. In a normal world, if you have a criticism, you should voice it. And honestly, who should you be criticizing more, or more willing to criticize, than your own quote unquote side? That's who you should be criticizing. That's who you care the most about. That's what you're a part of. That's what you know the most about. So no, it doesn't mean at all anything about my opinion about my vote for Trump. I think that's absurd. Now, I did see some people online saying that. I might show you some of those. There were some people who were first-time Trump voters, and they were saying, you know, that this association with Tate that they're pushing and everything, that's really making them regret their vote. I think that's a little bit emotional. And I also think it assumes that Trump even knows about all this, which I don't necessarily think he does. So, here, let's put some of this stuff up. I will say off the bat, I have another video, and maybe one of the mods can drop the link in the chat, or I'll put it in the description after this airs. I have another video I did last month. It's called Andrew Tate as a Moral Litmus Test. And I mentioned that one because in a lot of these conversations I was having online, there were people who were defending Trump. I'm not talking about the friends who had heard whatever the propaganda was that Tate was pushing, that like the charges had been dropped, which they're not. I'm not talking about that, but there were people who were actually defending him and saying things that are untrue. And there were a lot of people, there were some people in there saying, don't believe what the media says about Tate, about Andrew Tate. I think these charges are made up. It's like, are you kidding me? That tells me you haven't read the charges or looked at any of the evidence. And so I mentioned this previous video from last month because I did put a lot of video clips in that one. I'm not going to rehash all those video clips. A lot of them are triggering. I hate to use that word, but I mean, they're in one of them, you're watching him beat a 15-year-old who he has been having sex with. I mean, you're watching child sexual abuse. And so these clips, when they exist on X, sometimes get taken down because it's child exploitation. That's what the video is. And so fortunately my video from last month hasn't been removed yet, and so a lot of those clips are in there. And I was sending it to people. There were people like, oh, well, show me the evidence. I'm like, how many times do we have to do this? Why don't you go and look for the evidence? There's two really great Twitter accounts you can follow that are journalist accounts. They've basically dedicated themselves to reporting on these crimes of the Tate brothers, at least right now. One of them is Milk Bar TV. They have a YouTube account and they have tons of video evidence. There's also, is it Murder by Crayons is another great one. And they're both just consistently updating what's happening in this case. They have court documents. They have just archives of footage of the Tate brothers admitting to all of their crimes on camera. That's the thing, is I'm not getting my opinion on the Tate brothers from the media. Are you silly? I don't get any opinions from the media. I don't trust the media. I'm getting my opinion from pouring through all of this video footage of the Tate brothers on camera in their own words, admitting to what they're accused of. So go and watch it. Read the court documents. Read the charges. If you're in there saying to me, I don't know if there's any truth to this, well, why don't you go and find out before you start popping off about, oh, maybe they're just being railroaded. Why would they be railroaded? That's the other hilarious thing. Why would they be railroaded? They're not of any value. Who's got it out for them? What government's like, we've got to take out these Tate brothers? They're not doing any good. They're not adding any good to the world. These are pornographers and pimps and predators who brag on camera about shaking men down for money, insulting the men, making fun of the men, bragging about how some of these men have given them their life savings. They're so stupid. They've sold their houses to continue to pay for the porn that these guys produce. They make fun of these guys. They say, you consume the porn. Andrew Tate said this in a tweet. You consume the porn. I make the porn. I'm your God. He says this stuff. This is what they've spent their life doing. And exploiting women, not just shaking down men, but exploiting women, grooming children, moving them to other countries and putting them up like the 15-year-old, putting them up, having sex with them. He's accused of anally raping this child. I know I'm going to get a content warning now for even saying that word. You're not even allowed to talk about this stuff, but they're allowed to like put it out online, right? What they're doing. These are things that you can watch them doing some of these things on camera. You can watch them admitting to other things on this list on camera. Like, you can go and look at the evidence yourself. There are actually people who have been railroaded. Yes. The charges against Trump, for example, in New York, those 32 felonies or whatever it was, that was ridiculous. I did a whole episode on that. That's ridiculous. It's political persecution. It's nothing. Go and look at the details of that case. It was nonsense. It was nothing but political persecution of one's enemies. Kavanaugh, those charges against him, those were ridiculous. Not charges, but accusations against him when he was being confirmed for Supreme Court. They were nonsense. They were infuriating. So those things happen. Be more discerning. Don't lump the Tate brothers in with those guys. Be more discerning. You know, somebody said to me, "Oh, don't just trust everything the media says." And the same person says, if the media says it, that means it's a lie. I'm like, are you stupid? Are you stupid? Because that's a really great way to manipulate you if you believe that. Obviously, if you think everything the media says is true, you're gullible. And if you think everything the media says is a lie, you're gullible. Oh my goodness. I didn't think that was necessary to point out. Like, you can't. How easily manipulated are you if they know that all they have to do is tell you the opposite of what they want you to believe? Like, I mean, come on, people. I know this isn't the majority of people. It's just some of the comments I saw in my post were just a little bit like, wait, what? That's how you operate in life? As if the media says it, then you think the opposite is always true? That's ridiculous. That's just as ridiculous as saying, I believe everything they say. Okay. So Romania decided to lift the travel ban. Yes, ADL, the all or nothing fallacy. It's absurd. Have you heard of people who operate like that? Make sure you don't fall into that trap. It's also something like you should be evaluating, or I think you should. I do. I evaluate to make sure I'm not just falling into that knee jerk reaction place all the time. Because if I fell into that knee jerk reaction place, then I would be just as easily controlled and manipulated. Because I would be one of the people who always went the opposite way. Instead of looking at the facts in context, each story, each news story, each item, whatever it is you're discussing, and in that, spending the time in that case to figure out what you think, what I think, instead of what I'm told or the opposite of what I'm told. Okay. So they let him go. And this has been very, very illuminating because, as I said, there were a lot of people on the right, or whatever it is. Left and right doesn't really apply anymore, but let's just say the based world. There were a lot of based or anti-woke people who were criticizing any sort of support of Tate, which is great. Megyn Kelly, she's great. I've got some stuff from her. She's amazing. They're the Daily Wire guys, Jeremy Boring, like these guys, Joel Berry, the Babylon Bee. These guys were great. And because of the loud outcry from people who of just like, what are we doing? Is this true? Did someone in Trump's administration put pressure on Romania to let these guys travel? Because they just flew to Florida. And you know what? They're not going to go back. You know, they're not. Is Romania going to be able to extradite them? They're not going to go back to face trial. They just escaped justice, right? It's disgusting. And so there were enough conservatives calling it out that it caught Trump's attention. It made it all the way up to Trump, and Trump said, I don't know anything about this. And that's awesome. But on the other hand, you also had some scumbags who continued to reveal themselves, who did nothing but carry water for these monsters. Candace Owens being a prime example. I'm so done with her. I can't believe I ever shared anything she ever did. I can't watch her anymore. She's full of crap. Benny Johnson, who had this. Benny Johnson and Candace Owens are probably two of the biggest that carry water for, try and whitewash these predators, praise them, prop them up for some reason. And both of these guys are phony conservatives, in my opinion, but they also like to constantly tweet out, Benny Johnson and Candace Owens, Christ is king. And what they cloak themselves in Christianity while they push an admitted unrepentant pornographer and child sex trafficker on their audiences. They try and push that on us. And then they do a Mott and Bailey, and like Candace Owens yesterday was like, oh, I just cover it. No, you don't just cover it. Milk Bar TV has tons of videos dissecting how you went after some of the minors, the women who've made the accusations that are part of these criminal charges. You went after them and you exposed these women. You doxed some of them. You revealed their names, and you made sure to not reveal the names of convicted other people. I'm not talking about the Tates here, but other people who were convicted of sex crimes against children. Some of these accusers, one of these accusers, you didn't reveal the name of the guy who was convicted of the child sex crimes. You were like, I'm going to protect his identity, while you revealed her name. Like, to do disgusting stuff like that. And so these people continue to reveal themselves, doing nothing but carrying water for predators and trying to associate these predators with Trump. Why are they doing that? You know who else is doing that? The woke left, the media. The media and the woke left. They're trying to be like, oh, Tate and Trump, they're just the same. You know who else is doing that? Candace Owens, Benny Johnson, Laura Loomer, these big platforms. I don't know if they're paid off by the Tates. Actually, I don't even think that's necessarily it. I think they're just scum. I think they're scum. I don't think they care at all about associating Trump and MAGA with these predators, the repercussions of it. I think everything must be for clicks and fame. And I don't know. In Candace Owens' case, her husband is like best friends with the Tates, so maybe that has something to do with it. But I just think she's a dark person. Yes, Lindsay. Candace is a grifter, been saying since she came out of the scene. Just a reminder, she's the one who created Social Autopsy, which was a pro-doxing website. I remember that back when she was woke. Or right after she left woke. Yeah. Candace thinks the moon landings were faked. Hey, I have questions about those too. I'm kidding. Don't laugh at me, Helena. But you know, it's revealing. And I've seen some people saying, man, it's such a bummer. And it is such a bummer when somebody that you used to respect or watch or share their videos or be a part of their community or whatever, I know what that feels like. It's happened to me. I used to watch her stuff. It's like, it's disappointing and it's a bummer, but at the same time, thank you, God, for revealing some things to me, for helping me, teaching me how to be discerning. And sometimes God has to hit me over the head with it because I so don't want it to be true. And he's like, come on now, look at this. Look at what this person's doing now. It's like, oh, okay. Here, I know I said I would get to this article. Here's what's happening as a result. This is what the left, the media, the mainstream media, this is what they think of it. They're enjoying watching this. They're enjoying watching the right, what they call the right, Trump supporters, whatever, be quote unquote divided over this. I wouldn't say that we're divided. Most of the normal people I know, the Trump voters who span the spectrum from conservatives, longtime conservatives, to libertarians, to disaffected liberals, and everything in between. Almost everyone I know, and definitely everyone I respect, we're not divided on this issue. It's like, these are moral monster. Like, it's a easy moral litmus test. These are monsters. If you have a moral pulse, you're not standing for these child traffickers, these unrepentant pornographers, these narcissists and grifters and con artists, the Tate brothers. So it's not a division. It appears like a division from the outside. Why? Because you've got these large platforms, like I just mentioned, Benny Johnson, Candace Owens, I don't know, Laura Lou, these guys who are carrying water for the Tate brothers. And so this is what the mainstream is writing articles about. They look at that. They love it. Look, want to know about the Tate brothers charges and the reactions to the return to America? Well, that wasn't the original title. The original title, which they've just changed, I guess, is how how they're dividing the right. That's what it was called. Hold on, let me see if I can find. They changed the title. Hold on. Look, here it is. You can see it. Let me add it back. You see that second link there that's purple? So how the U.S. right is divided over the Tate brothers' return. And now they've changed the title. But let's scroll down because this is about the right and how. Look, the first sentence: the return of the Tates to the U.S. is fracturing the right. Self-described misogynist influencer Andrew and his brother Tristan touched down in Florida on February 27th, that was yesterday, after a 2-year travel ban due to pending human trafficking and other charges against them in Romania. The brothers were released after Romanian prosecutors approved a request to lift their restrictions, according to Romania's anti-organized crime agency, boycott. Although the agency did not specify who made the request, they didn't say who made it. Reporting from the Financial Times suggests that the Trump administration placed pressure on Romanian authorities to return the Tate brothers' U.S. passports and allow them to travel, which means essentially to escape prosecution. The news of their arrival incited expected blowback from Democrats. Of course it did. They love it. And the Democrats can't wait to try and tie these guys to Trump. The news of their arrival incited expected blowback from Democrats. Delaware Senator Chris Coons posted on X, "Why is the Trump administration importing sex traffickers?" Ugh. But a number of Republican politicians, as well as right-wing commentators, also joined the chorus of criticism. Good. I love that it was so much from conservatives or from Trump supporters that time was forced to acknowledge that, instead of pretending like all of the right or all conservatives or all Trump voters are, on board with this Tate crap, which we're not. Quote, "What's the point of booting out illegals and criminals while somehow becoming a safe haven for the Tate brothers?" Great question, asked Barstool Sports owner Dave Portnoy, who said he voted for Trump last November. Here's another one. Ben Shapiro said, "America does not need more self-proclaimed pimps and terror supporters with outstanding criminal allegations of sex trafficking and a history of pornographic distribution." That's what Ben Shapiro said. Agreed. Jeremy Boring, who's also from the Daily Wire, said, "Andrew Tate is the enemy of any traditional American conservatism." Yes, I can't say that even better. He's not a conservative. This is a guy who just the past 2 months was tweeting about how men need to have babies with as many women as possible. And any guy who is married and monogamous, in a traditional Christian marriage is a cuck. This is what this guy was saying. He's anti-marriage. He's anti-Christianity. He's anti-family. He's about creating as many single father homes as possible. And that's the way you prove you're a king, he said. This guy's a dirtbag. This guy is just as much of a threat to Western civilization and to the traditional American family and to Christianity and to everything that's good. He's just as much of a threat as woke ideology. Tell me, how's he any different? So Jerry Boring's right. He's the enemy of traditional American conservatism. GOP Senator Josh Hawley told a Huffington Post reporter, quote, "I don't think conservatives should be glorifying this guy at all. I certainly don't think we should be using any influence in our government to try and get him out of what seemed to be extremely serious charges in Romania." Yes, exactly. Like, why did we go and pull him out of there if that's true? Why? There are people who are saying to me, I think they're like, well, doesn't he have dual citizenship in the UK and the US? And, you know, he's an American citizen, so we shouldn't deny him entry. Well, I think you're right. I'm not saying we should deny him entry. What I'm saying is, if this is true, then why did we do this? Why did we put pressure on Romania to release them? They're sitting there on serious charges. Let them face those charges. And by the way, they went to Romania to escape charges and litigation in the UK. Because Romania, everybody wants to talk about Romania is corrupt. Yeah, that's why they went there. This really feels like a moral watershed. posted researcher and right-wing commentator Richard Hanania. How do you say that guy's name? Everything else MAGA does has some kind of twisted moral logic that maybe you can see if you squint really hard, but this time it's just, we love pimping. This guy, who is this guy? I've recognized his name, but I don't know who he is. He also said they're going to Florida. I wonder if DeSantis will greet them on the tarmac. No, because DeSantis, this makes me feel so good. I was a DeSantis supporter. I feel like he's got his head screwed on right. And he basically said, like the sheriff at the edge of the state border, at the edge of town, he's like, "You're not welcome here." I love it. I love it. I love it. It's so Old West. He's like, "You're not welcome in this town." Florida Republican Governor Ron DeSantis did not quote, "Florida is not a place where you're welcome with that type of conduct in the air." DeSantis said at a news conference Thursday. I don't know how it came to this. We were not involved. We were not notified. I found out through the media that this was something that was happening, meaning that they're coming to Florida to reside in Florida. He added that a Florida Attorney General James Uthmeyer is currently looking at, quote, what state hooks and jurisdiction there are to, quote, deal with this. So he's looking to see if they can do anything. I don't think they can, but I don't fault him for looking. I don't want these guys in my state. Don't come to Texas. I don't want child traffickers here. I don't want sex traffickers in Texas. Why would you? Altheimer posted on X that he had directed his office, quote, to work with our state law enforcement partners to conduct a preliminary inquiry, and that, quote, Florida has zero tolerance for human trafficking and violence against women. If any of those alleged crimes trigger Florida jurisdiction, then we will hold them accountable. But DeSantis and the other critics are not indicative of the entire right's perspective on the matter. Great. Here's the part of the article where they're like, look at these so-called right-wing, so-called conservative, so-called Christian influencers who are supporting these monsters. They love this part. They said others, particularly vocal Trump supporters, see how they try to tie it to Trump, have appeared to celebrate the Tate brothers' return. Conservative commentator Candace Owens, of course, suggested that the Tates were political martyrs. What? Posting on X, quote, the restrictions that were placed on the Tate brothers in Romania were always an act of intergovernmental corruption. Bullshit. These guys are charged with running an international sex trafficking operation. You don't think that they should have travel restrictions placed on them so that they don't escape trial, escape justice? Give me a break. You're a liar. It makes perfect sense because they have unlimited money and they have connections with people like you who have unlimited money. So, of course, they're going to escape. And they did. This is why we have bail restrictions for certain criminals with certain access, people who are on trial, awaiting trial, and have access and the means. That's why their bail will sometimes be higher, or there might be travel restrictions or things like that. So, I'm glad they had those restrictions. I think it's insane that they lifted those travel restrictions. So then she said, do not follow or listen to people who support government corruption because they do not like a person's character, beliefs, or past actions. Bullshit. At least she correctly points out that that the character of these guys is shit, because she normally doesn't do that. But then she's like, this is just darkness projecting and trying to call the light dark. That's what's happening here. So my advice, I would amend this slightly, Candace, to say, do not follow or listen to people who have proven themselves to be grifting hypocrites who cloak themselves in the name of Christ while they try and rehabilitate the image of unrepentant, admitted pornographers and pimps who are accused, facing trial, facing charges of sex trafficking, including sex trafficking of minors, in which there's video footage of Andrew Tate on camera beating the 15-year-old accuser, on camera in a video that he himself admits is from 2012 when the girl was 15 years old. I think you're disgusting for supporting this. I think you're as disgusting as he is. Several other voices on the right also chimed in. Of course, it's the worst of the worst. Quote, the Tate brothers are U.S. citizens, posted right-wing influencer Laura Loomer. Good thing Ron DeSantis isn't president. It's funny how I think in the past year, like you start to see these purveyors of darkness who normally hate each other. I think Laura Loomer and Candace Owens usually go at each other's throats, but sometimes you see you're like, oh, who's lining up to try and run cover for these predators? Oh, it's the worst of the worst. They're all teaming up together. The worst of the worst. There we go. Valentina Gomez, this psychopath. Here's another one who unsuccessfully ran in 2024 to be Secretary of State of Missouri and is now running for Congress in Texas. Texas, don't let this happen. Go watch any of these women's videos and tell me she's not mentally ill. A mentally ill grifter. Like, she posted that DeSantis feels emasculated by the Tates. She also said, I saw one of her posts. She said, I like the Tates. I love the Tates. She's another one who puts Christ is King in her bio while posting insane cluster B kind of stuff, like just insanity. Root these people out. And Tampa Bay young Republicans gave the Tates the welcome that DeSantis would not. Quote, as free speech absolutists, the Tates haven't been formally convicted of any crimes. That's like saying, as free speech absolutists, the jury found O.J. Simpson guilty, so we're happy to host him at our event. This murderer. The Tates haven't been formally convicted of any crimes, so they're welcome to speak to our group. We're old enough to remember when a convicted felon won the presidency. Again, what are they doing there? They're trying to associate the Tates with Trump. Trump, who I think it's a badge of honor that he's a convicted felon because his charges were bogus and BS. And if you've looked into that case and you've looked into the charges, you know that to be true. And then you've got the Tate brothers. These charges have merit. They are the scumbags. They are the child traffickers. They are the admitted pornographers. They're trying to conflate these two, associate. Why are they doing that? It's like the left is doing that, and these kind of woke right people are doing that. Trying to say they're just the same. Continue. Debate ensued online over whether actually let me just stop. Let me stop with the Tampa Bay young Republicans for just a second and show you this. Megyn Kelly, as I mentioned, is one of the good ones. Megyn Kelly, she did several posts about the Tampa Bay young Republicans. She said, "You've lost your way, boys." You know, good for her, trying to offer them correction. And then she said, "Hey, Tampa Bay young Republicans, is this what you want to platform? Are you good with this?" Let's just watch this little clip. There's so many clips of him. I'm sure we covered this one already. But there's so many clips of this guy just admitting right on camera what he is. Here we go.
They didn't teach you in self-defense? Here's a little move. When I grab you by your neck and you start annoying me trying to resist, and I just, and then I grab you by your neck again. Then what the fuck are you gonna do when your face is collapsed and your fucking cheekbone's broken? You ain't gonna do shit but cry.
I guarantee I changed the way you look at sex forever. You're gonna be fucking crying. I won't cry. I bet you cry, bitch. I bet you fucking cry. You're saying I wouldn't cry. You're challenging me to a fight.
By the way, these are video clips of him bragging about how he would sell these courses to men on how to become a pimp like him. A pimp. And part of his classes and his advice to men was to beat up women. Because women enjoy it, apparently, is what he's saying, collapsing their face in. And we enjoy that. And this is how to be a real masculine man, is to beat a woman's face in.
You're saying I can't hurt you. You're out of your fucking mind? I don't even have to fuck you. Forget the sex part. That's a distraction. My dick can stay in my pants. I'll just start beating the shit out of you. How about that? We walk in the bedroom. I start kicking your ass. No sex. No sex involved. But you cry then.
I perfected this in pimp school. When I got my PhD, we had to practice if a girl comes at you.
His PhD, he means he doesn't have a PhD. His PhD is what he calls his pimpin' hose degree. The classes that he sells to men, he will sell you a pimpin' hose degree where he teaches you, where it's just him verbally masturbating like this on camera, just bragging about all the women he beats up and how you can be like him. Give him your money, guys. He'll teach you how to be a true masculine man, this loser.
It's in pimp school. When I got my PhD, we had to practice if a girl comes at you, you cheater, you're cheating. It's bang out the machete, boom in her face, and then grip her up by the neck. Shut up, bitch! Her panties get wet. Machete's on the floor, her panties are all wet. You go, fuck her. That's how it goes. Slap, slap, grab, choke, shut up, bitch, sex. These are the basic moves of pimping.
Yeah. So I've got the same question for anybody who calls themselves, I mean, it doesn't even matter if you call yourself Republican conservative. For any human being or any organization that's like, yeah, we want this guy to come talk to us. Are you sure this is what you want to promote? Are you sure this is what you're about? Are you sure this is what you're, if you're willing to associate your name and character with that piece of shit, well, your name and character aren't worth anything anyway. I've been saying, the best case scenario, if you're one of these people online carrying water for these monsters, the best case scenario is that you have extremely poor judgment. Or you're naive. Maybe you don't follow the news, you haven't looked into the case, and you're just hearing the propaganda part, which I can understand. And that's fine. But if you've looked into the details, if you've seen these video clips, if you've looked at the evidence and you're carrying water for this monster, like it's not just poor judgment, it's a poor character yourself. It's evidence of bad fruit, bad character. I don't want you anywhere near me. I don't want to support your channel. I'm not going to be sharing your clips. I don't care if you say some things I agree with. I don't care how big your platform is. I know there's a lot of people who have shows and podcasts and stuff like this today, and that's great. It seems to me that some people are afraid of criticizing anyone with a large platform for their bad choices, for their bad characters. They're afraid of criticizing them because I guess they think if I don't criticize, then I might get invited to the right parties, or I might get invited to the right or to be a guest on a big podcast or something, or, I want to kiss up to this person because they have a huge platform. That's it's so low. It's so middle school. It's so, I don't care. Like, what world are you living in? We're not living in the same world. That stuff isn't important. Like, life is short. What's the meaning of life while you're here? This all relates back. This is why this Andrew Tate topic is important to me, I guess. It's like, it's again evidence of people just like throwing away this gift that God has given us. What is life about? I'm serious. I get back to these big picture questions with something even like this. I get back to this big picture question. What is the purpose and meaning of life? What is it? Is it to accumulate influence and power and money? No, it's none of those things. Especially if you are someone who has Christ as King in your bio, and you're either rehabilitating the image of a predator, like some of the ones I've called out, or if you're afraid of criticizing someone who's doing that because you want access to power, influence, money, whatever it is, fame. You need to, I think, if you have Christ as King in your bio, or you claim to be a Christian, you're doing those things, like, you need to maybe take some time offline, do a gut check, call your elders, call someone who's spiritually wiser than you are, and like get right again. Like do a gut check. Like wait a minute, what are my values and priorities? What's important in the world? Like what is important in life? Are my priorities correctly aligned, or did I let them slip? Right? If you care more about kissing butt of someone who's either in darkness or covering for darkness, like your priorities are off. Something happened. Something happened. You're supposed to if you're a believer, you're supposed to let your light shine for Christ. You're a lantern for the Holy Spirit. You're a lantern for God's light. Like, so you're going to put that out. You're going to put out the light so that you can run cover for darkness, or you can suck up to someone who's running cover for darkness. How cheap your belief, how your faith is. I'm going to throw this away and cover up my light. Why? Because I don't want to potentially maybe lose an opportunity that might come one day to be on this person's platform, or to what's it called? Elbow shoulder to shoulder with influencer fame, or whatever that's called, buddy with it. Like, that's so cheap. Your faith is so cheap. Your relationship with God is so cheap to throw it away like that. To be like, it's not as important as saving face, as saving the potential for what? Brushing with something earthly, some worldly thing. Fame, money, power, control, influence, that stuff. Worldly stuff. Gosh. Cheap or never there. Yeah, exactly, John. Rub shoulders. Oh, thank you, Dion. Rubbing shoulders. I forget. I always, if I'm in the middle of I feel like I'm trying to articulate what I'm saying. Sometimes it's difficult when it's something that involves like this sort of spirit, I don't know, spiritual, or, just what's important in life. I'm trying to put this into words. And then I'm like, wait, what is that euphemism or that thing? Where is it? Rubbing elbows? Oh, man. Okay. I didn't mean to get so deep or serious on it, but I knew that this is what I think about this stuff, though. This is why it's important to me. And as I was thinking about what I was going to talk about today, I was like, I know there's probably some people are like, why are you talking about Andrew Tate again? I'm like, because it's important. Because this is a good litmus test. This is a good litmus test to see what people think and what they're made of. This is about, in the Bible, it talks about, you shall know them by their fruits. You shall know them by their behavior and their actions and the way they live their lives and what they do. And what they do with not just the gifts that God has given them, but what they do with all of the, I don't know, assets or things that they have, the power that influence them, all those things, the worldly things. What do they do with it? That's the fruits. Do they use those things to cover for darkness? Or to push darkness, or to invert truth? Or do they use those things to be a light, no matter the worldly consequences? This story, this Andrew Tate thing, is a good litmus test. It's a good way to discern. Who are you listening to? Who are your influences, right? Be careful. Just because a person says some things that you agree with or that I agree with doesn't mean that they are a purveyor of light. It doesn't mean that they are speaking truth. Con artists, grifters, that's what a con artist is. That's what a grifter is. They're always going to say some things you agree. That's the grift. That's what it is. Look at con artists in mega churches back in the 90s and stuff. Like, that's what they're doing. They're out there saying one thing and living a different way. A lot of the ones who got exposed for all this depraved behavior behind the scenes, it's like, they're not living what they say. Okay, well, there's people like that operating in this new media kind of platform space who are running cover for literal child predators. Like, they're just, it is a great moral litmus test. Let me go back to that article for a second, because this guy, Oren McIntyre, okay, I didn't know very much about him. I'm starting to learn that I don't think this guy is I don't think this guy's a purveyor of light. Let's put it that way. I don't know. I'm just starting to learn. It says Aaron McIntyre, a host and columnist for right-wing outlet The Blaze, called making it a litmus test a mistake. Posting in a thread on X, Tate only exists because American conservatives have failed so thoroughly at speaking to young men and portraying masculinity in a positive light. If you find that your movement is unable to provide a strong and compelling vision of masculinity because it's too afraid of offending the wrong people, then you shouldn't be surprised when a guy like Tate comes around to fill that void. Now, I don't agree with any of that stuff that he said about Tate. That's actually true. All of that's true. Yes, this is why Tate is appealing. This is why Tate is able to successfully run his grift, because we live in a culture that's been so dominated by this woke religion, by this upside down religion that tries to demonize men and demonize masculinity and destroy the traditional family and destroy fathers and destroy marriage and destroy God. We've lived in that world for such a long time now that young men are starving for a positive male role model, they're just starving for someone to tell them that masculinity is okay, for a father figure, for they're starving for truth. They're starving for God, honestly. And so what does a good con artist like Tate do? He comes in and takes advantage of that and sells this phony idea of masculinity, just as phony and false as what the left sells. Where he's like, masculinity is beating a woman's face in and collapsing it. Masculinity is, what did he say this month? Having children with as many women as possible and creating as many fatherless homes as possible. That's what he's selling. He's selling porn, exploitation of men and women, destroying the traditional family, destroying God. He calls himself God. That's what he's selling. So he takes advantage of that need, that desire for masculine role models, and he sells a counterfeit version. So yes, Aaron McIntyre, I agree. That's why he has any kind of following at all. But what's wrong here is to somehow tie that to, making Tate himself a litmus test, to try and tie that to defending Tate. That's what's messed up. So therefore, this is what's happening. He's a con artist, and he's appealing to guys who are looking for masculine role models, and therefore he's good. What? I don't get how you're arriving to that conclusion. This is what he was responding to. Let me put this on the screen. Jeremy Boring from Daily Wire had said, the way conservatives and conservative organizations respond to Andrew Tate arriving on U.S. soil will tell you everything you need to know about them. Any organization or host who embraces him is engaged in far worse than simple grift, though it is that too. Andrew Tate is the enemy of any traditional American conservatism. This post is absolute truth. Absolute truth. And so Aaron McIntyre was responding to that and saying, Tate's terrible, but turning him into some form of litmus test is a mistake. No, it's not. No, it's not. Boring in that post, he's not talking about the young men who are being fooled by Tate. The followers, the listeners, the people who are listening to Benny Johnson or listening to Candace Owens or listening to Laura. He's not talking about those guys. He's talking about the influencers, the frauds, who are out there making the defense of Tate. It's a good litmus test. It is. Zora says Tate was never appealing to true conservatives. The woke were far more obsessed with him than real conservatives ever were. The conservatives I follow ignored him or treated him as an imposter. That's good to hear because he is an imposter. And now it's so crazy because he's actually, this is why he's a good litmus test. This is what boring means by that. And this is what I mean. He's revealing who else is an imposter. Who else is pushing this guy? You are not a conservative or a Christian if you're pushing an unrepentant pornographer and child trafficker or child sex trafficker on people. I'm sorry, you're not. Benny Johnson had him on his show, and it wasn't to interview him or do hard-hitting journalism. He didn't even ask him about the child sex trafficking charges. He didn't ask him anything. He didn't do any journalism with him. He just brought him on to promote him and pimp him out to his conservative audience. That's what Benny Johnson did. And to say he was fanboying, and he had somebody from the Trump administration on, Alina Habba, to say she was having a fangirl moment. So Trump, now that this has all come to his attention, he needs to fire some of those people. There's a guy I don't even know, because if according to him, he doesn't know about any of this stuff. If he doesn't know, then it's like, well, somebody got you to hire this guy, Paul Ingrassia. Paul Ingrassia is a Tate fanboy who's now in the Justice Department. Alana Habba, the one that was on Benny Johnson's show. You've got these people in your administration who are phonies, who are frauds, who are carrying water for this predator, for this sex trafficker. Some of us actually believe in the things we say we believe in. It's so weird. It's so weird to see the frauds who are like, yeah, we want to get rid of illegal immigrants who are sex traffickers and who are abusers, and and then they're like, hey, come on in, sex trafficker and abuser, when it's Andrew Tate. What is wrong with you? Yes, Kiwi, we have to start using the fruit of the spirit as a tool to discern truth from lies. Yes. Thank you, Randy. You interrupted my rant with something good. Thank you. Randy Wallen for $10. Thank you, sir. He says, don't forget to like, comment, and sub. By the way, the Tates are scum. Absolute bottom of the barrel scum. Men, time to stop being weak. Time to fill the role model vacuum with strong and honorable men. Yes, Randy. This is the thing about what Aura McIntyre was saying and about what you're saying. We know what the problem is. We know that we've been, when it comes to why someone like Tate would have any following among young men, we know the problem is that we've been in this culture that's been attacking the traditional family, attacking Christianity, attacking God, attacking families, attacking fatherhood and fathers and husbands, attacking men and masculinity, attacking femininity and women and motherhood. And so culturally, we have to start healing and providing better role models for men and for women, so that they're not so hungry and thirsty that they're going to obvious con artists like the Tates. And most of these role models will be in your real life. Maybe you're someone who could be that role model for young men in your church, or young men in your school or your community or wherever you work, like in your town. Maybe you're someone who could be that kind of a role model for young people. If you're a woman, maybe you can be that kind of role model for young women. But, there's also the online ones. I just think the online people have less, funny enough, have less meaningful influence. And that's by virtue of them being, they're talking to cameras. You don't know them personally. And there's so much opportunity for grifters online, like for con artists like the Tates to come in and try and fill this void that should honestly be filled, preferably, if possible, in real life. But if you're looking for someone online, I mean, Jordan Peterson filled that role for me. Jordan Peterson, that's why Jordan Peterson was so popular as well. People were looking for, I know for a lot of the young men who started reading his books and following him, it was because they were looking for that positive expression of masculinity, of fatherhood, of being a husband, of, being a male role model. And that's what he was for a lot of young men. Now, it wasn't just young men. There were a lot of young women. I know the leftist media always like to say it was young men, but I went to his shows. He wrote me. He's part of the reason I even started doing a podcast and writing about this stuff anyway. When I was leaving the woke left, he read one of my letters on his show, and he helped me. I guess you could say he was a positive example of masculinity for me, but it was more so for me, helping me to see that what I was noticing in my world, in my echo chamber, in my leftist echo chamber, that I wasn't crazy, that this was happening, that there was something really wrong with woke ideology, and helped me to put words to that and to see it and to understand it. And he helped me to get over my fear of leaving that cult. He helped me to say something about it, to start speaking about it, because it's important. And ultimately, he helped set me on the path that led me to finding God, which I know he did for a lot of people. So there you go. There's an example. If you need an online one, somebody with a big platform, Jordan Peterson. I think he's a great example. Does he have his own failings? Is he a human being? Yes. Yes, he's a human being. Shocker. He's got some failings. But is he doing good in the world? Yes. Is he sex trafficking minors and prostituting and pimping people and telling men that the way to be a man is to beat women in the face until it collapses? No, he's not doing any of that. Perhaps we should, perhaps you can put your eggs in that basket if you need someone who's online. Oh, that's right. Randy Wall and I. Well, yeah, the first time I saw Peterson, Mystery Chris and I went a few years ago when he was in Austin. That was several years ago, Mystery Chris and I. And then Randy Wallen was so kind. Randy invited my husband and I. We got to go see him. When was that? I don't know. I'm bad with time. It was sometime this past year. It was a lot of fun. Thank you, Randy. Okay. Michelle from Force of Light, girl. Thank you for the generous super chat for $19.99. Michelle says, Tate isn't just popular because of lack of good role models. He's popular because he appeals to sinful desires. Just how many used to look up to rock stars and rappers who promoted promiscuous lifestyles? You're right. Girl, I hadn't even thought of it that way. I so appreciate your perspective. It's not just because he's filling that role and he's a counterfeit version. It's also because it's because he's a counterfeit version. It's because he's a cheap, fake, counterfeit masculinity that's like a sinful, disgusting perversion of masculinity. Yes. What do they talk about? How like Satan never creates, Satan imitates and perverts and distorts. Tate is a imitation, a perversion, a distortion of masculinity. Thank you for that, Michelle. Also from Michelle for $1.99. Candace is a hypocrite, birds of a feather. Yes. Thank you, God, for this discernment. Because I'm starting to see, like when I first came out of woke, I'd been in that cult, that leftist cult. And when you're in there, you were taught to think all kinds of things about conservatives. Like you've completely written them off. Like, cause I was in a cult. So I didn't know anything about all these people that I just thought, they're all just bad. I didn't know anything about Ben Shapiro, but I had already written him off. I thought he was a racist and a misogynist and all this stuff. That's true for a lot of people on the right, conservative commentators. And so when I started leaving the cult, I was really like, I have to be open to hearing what everyone says and making up my mind on things. And I know, having been in the cult, I know how they call anyone and everyone, the woke left calls anyone and everyone racist, sexist, misogynist, Nazi, all these things. And I've been through it. I have real life experience of once you come out of that cult, what's one of the problems with that is that they disorient people to where those words almost don't mean anything at all. So when you come out, you're like wide-eyed. I'm sorry, I'm getting emotional. I don't know why. I just know so many people who've left the woke cult, who've had private conversations with me, who've emailed me, who've wanted to talk about this stuff. And it's like, when you first come out, it is like a lot of other cults in this way. You're sort of like trying to figure out what is truth, what's up, what's down, because everything you believed was a lie. It seems like when you're leaving a cult, you're like, oh my gosh, everything I believed was a lie. I can't trust myself. So at the very beginning, when you're coming out, you're looking, you're following everyone. At the beginning, I was still following people that were leftist, like Robert Reich, like at the beginning of the stream, who I showed, because I also didn't want to be completely prejudiced and cut those people out, their perspective out. So this is also why I follow so many people in X, which now it's hard for me to keep up with anything because I followed too many people. But I was really just like, anybody who said anything interesting, or even if I disagree with it, I would hit follow so I could see what they were saying. And I started meeting lots of people this way online on Facebook and stuff. And I started following every conservative that I had previously thought was like, that's a bad person or whatever, just because the woke had told me that. So I was like, oh, I can't trust the woke. I got to make up my own mind. So when I first started leaving the woke cult in 2016, 2017, those first few years, like, people call me a bit of a Pollyanna, like always wanting to see the best in people or whatever. But a lot of that is really by necessity because I didn't know. So you have to I was looking at all these people like Candace Owens, Ben Shapiro, all these people that I'd maybe previously would have thought were bad. Not Candace. She came out of the left around the same time I did, or maybe after actually. But I was just adding people like her and Ben and everyone. I'm listening to all of them. I didn't want to rule any voices out because I didn't want to end up in another cult. Does this make sense? So this happens to a lot of us. And that's one of the worst evils of the woke cult is they disorient you. So you don't know what truth is. You don't know what's up, what's down. They make you a puppet for evil when you think you're doing good. And so when you come out of that, you're really just like a newborn, like what do I believe? I've got to evaluate every idea now. It's going to take time. I've got to evaluate every issue, climate change, like there's some that I still haven't gotten to because I'm boring. I don't want to get to climate change. But every single issue I need to take the time to make my own opinion. Every single person I need to make my own. I need to be discerning. So I'm going to follow everyone and see what I think. And the point is, I'm at a point where thank God is starting to give me some discernment, or maybe he's just having to be very obvious because some of us like me are very slow. We don't want to believe that someone's pushing darkness because I agree with some things they say, right? But he's starting to reveal. This has been a year of unmaskings. So thank God for that. Now I know. I've done my due diligence. And I have opinions now about some of these people I used to follow and who I agree with on many things. I'm like, I think you're a bad person. That means a lot to me, actually. Intent means a lot to me. Your character does mean a lot to me. I would rather be friends with and follow someone who I think has a good heart, but is still stuck in like the woke cult, for example. I'd rather hang out with them because I think their heart is good. If they're one of the ones I think their heart is good and they might be able to come out of those bad beliefs, I'd rather hang out with them than someone who's a dark character, a bad person, who's saying some things I agree with and who's criticizing woke. I don't want you anywhere near me, you snake. That's discernment. That's what I think it is. So thank you, God, for the discernment. It sucks sometimes. It's a bummer. It's disappointing when you're disappointed in certain people, but Andrew Knapp for $10. Thank you, Andrew. He says, I think we on the right are regaining some cultural power. Yes, we are. Now be wary of those on our own side getting power and discern if they're really worthy of the power they now wield. Power is revealing. Oh my goodness, it's revealing. Yes. So when I was in the woke cult, I have several examples of this in my own life where God taught me this lesson. But one of the biggest ones was one of the comedians I worked with, an entertainer I worked with. We sold a TV show, and overnight, like, went from being a comedian who most people didn't know to being on a national program, and started to get all this fame and power. What comes with fame, power, money, things like that. And he started changing. At least that's what I thought. I thought I was observing. That's what some of us thought we were observing. But one of my friends who was older and wiser, who was on that show with me, and we were witnessing this person become monstrous. And she said to me, Keri, he's not changing. He is, from the way she looked at it was, you're now seeing this person in different circumstances or in a different light. You're seeing them in the light of power. You're seeing them with power. You're seeing who they are. You're seeing other parts of their character that you could not see when they didn't have power. And that was just a different way of looking at it that kind of changed. I was like, oh, like it's not necessarily that maybe a person, maybe they do, maybe they're changing also. Maybe it's a little of both. But the way you put it is so much more succinct there, Andrew. Power is revealing. Yes, it is. I'll mention another comedian who I think is a great guy with a good heart, Dave Chappelle. Dave Chappelle, when he got power, what happened? He ended up walking away from millions and millions and millions of dollars, and leaving his show at the height of its popularity. And I remember the press, the media, the devil was like, what's he doing? He's gone crazy. Dave Chappelle's gone crazy. He's going to a farm in Ohio. How could he walk away from these millions? He must be losing it. And even then, even before I knew God, I remember thinking like, no, like maybe he's sane. Maybe he's actually sane. Power was very revealing with him, I think, also because it showed that he's not a person who will take power at all costs, at the price of his soul. He was willing to give it up, some of it. He was willing to give it up and give up some money and everything because he was like, this is not right, what's happening. I don't know. Thank God for great unmaskings. Good grief. Dave Chappelle is a true legend. Yes, he is. And I think, for what it's worth, my gut on him is that he's a good guy. Let's see. I recommended to Keri she have Alyssa Childers on Deprogrammed. Oh, yes. You know what? Ooh, let me make a note about that again. Alyssa Childers. I guess I could share more of the Tate brother news articles, but the one I read is pretty good. I don't know. I got into the more important, meaningful stuff here. I didn't spend as much time. I guess I'm not like your normal sort of, here's all the new hard-hitting news about like, here's the news article and here's what it makes me think about, and about God and about character and about what's important and why should this story be of any interest at all? Well, here's why. Because it tells you what people are about. It is a good moral litmus test. I think that's what I want to say about it. And if you need more details on the charges and everything, if you need more video footage, if you want to see the evidence, I'm going to put the link below. Visit the link to my previous video, Andrew Tate as a moral litmus test. And in the description of that video, I'll put it below too, but there's two really great X accounts that are doing a lot of independent journalism, and they've been following the case, and they post everything. They have all the video footage. They have the court documents. Every time he says a lie, they show with receipts, here's why he's lying. Like, they're great accounts. One is Milk Bar TV and one is Murder by Crayons. So go watch those guys. Go follow those guys. Milk Bar TV, I know, has a YouTube channel. Murder by Crayons might have one, but they are the best accounts that are on top of it. If you're someone who's like, I want to see the evidence, then go check it out. Thank you, good grief. Thank you. This is the summary. In summary today, here we go. In summary, just because the left sucks doesn't mean we have to accept every creep who claims to be on the right. Exactly. And in fact, it's like that Nietzsche quote, be careful fighting monsters, lest you become the monster you fight. Because when you peer too long into the darkness also peers into you. And you know what? When I was leaving the left, that quote, the first time I heard that quote, I was at a church in Austin, Texas, and it jumped out at me. I went home and looked it up. I started reading about it. Like that quote, that Nietzsche quote was because I was leaving. I was in the middle of leaving the woke left at that time. This was like 2016, 2017. And that was telling me about the left, because the left, for so long, I had thought the left is about fighting monsters. The left is about fighting bad guys. And that quote is sort of saying, like, be very careful lest you become the bad guy. Be very careful. And I think that quote equally applies today to what we're seeing with some of these so-called right-wing influencers who are pushing and promoting bad ideas, bad people, bad ideas of masculinity, who are promoting counterfeit crap. Get rid of them. Mark and avoid. Get rid of it. Don't let that stuff into your head or your heart. And I think it applies to them, because it's like, if you're so, you can go blind to your own capacity for evil and darkness, if you and your capacity to be swayed by it and manipulated by it. You can go blind to that if you falsely believe, I'm a good person, I'm on the side of righteousness always. Like, no, it's ego. That's total ego. Ego is like a door. It's a door to all these other sins. Ego and pride, I think Benjamin Franklin wrote about that, how pride is like the doorway to a bunch of other sins. Because pride's like, I'm smart, I'm one of the good guys. Pride is what says, makes you make stupid decisions, like that person I mentioned earlier who says, if the media says it, I automatically believe the opposite. Well, that's dumb. It's just as dumb as if the media says it, automatically believing it, Steven, I can't believe Keri only has 19.9 thousand subscribers. She should have a lot more, in my opinion. Oh, thank you, Steven. That's true. You should subscribe here on YouTube if you're not already. We'll get to 20K and maybe have a little party or something. I think it's been a while waiting to get to 20. Here's the account. Thank you, Cheeky Mare. Oh, good to see you. Cheeky Mare linked to Crayon Murders on YouTube. They do have a YouTube channel. Okay, so go subscribe to Crayon Murders and subscribe to Milk Bar TV. They both cover a lot of the Tates. If you're interested in the Tate stuff, that's really all they cover, as far as I know. True crime people like me, if you're interested in true crime, you'll like to get into the receipts of all of it and the evidence of it and everything. Okay. I'm gonna go. I said what I want. I said what, but my thesis is really just be careful, be discerning. These are monsters. Why are we propping up monsters? Look at fruits. Look at people's behaviors and actions, not just their words. See if they match up or not. This is my advice for you, because it's my advice for myself and the things I try and keep in mind. And I will see you guys on Monday at 2:00 Central. And I've got an interview coming up this coming week that I'm pretty excited about, and some other stuff going on. I'll let you guys know. But if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please hit subscribe. If you want to support the channel, you can do so at YouTube, Locals, Patreon, or Subscribestar. And I appreciate you guys. Let me just answer this question real quick. I'm on the way out, but Zora says, I haven't been on a live show in a while, but I just want to say I love your Jesus statue in the back. Is there an interesting story behind it? Well, there's just a funny little, I like religious art. And so I have not just the statues that you can see, but I have like some old Maybe I should show sometime. I have one of those old 1950s blue, kind of a blue colored painting of Jesus when he's at Mount Olives. Do you guys know that from the 50s, that painting I'm talking about? A lot of people's grandmothers had it, and I have one of those because it makes me think of my grandma. And it's pretty common in thrift stores, and I've got one of those right up there. But I also have some friends who are Roman Orthodox, and they've sent me some artwork, and Greek Orthodox, and they've sent me some artwork and icons and stuff. And when I was younger, when I was in the woke world, I really liked a lot of dark art, and I still have some of that stuff, kind of creepy art or whatever. But now I'm more into, I'm more into religious stuff and older stuff and um, Renaissance stuff. And so that's the kind of stuff I collect. And anyway, all that to say, don't let anyone make you feel bad for having religious art or icons or anything. I had this dark-hearted person who was following me around to different shows for a time and saying stuff about how Keri's a fake Christian, or Keri worships idols because she has a Mary statue. And I'm like, okay, there's no truth in that. I like positive art. I like art that makes me think of God. That's the stage I'm at in my life right now. And I like old stuff a lot. I really like antiques. So yeah, don't let anyone crap on you for the kind of artwork that you like. And so anyway, the Jesus statue, there's a thrift store pretty close to me that has a lot of religious stuff and stuff from churches and really expensive stuff I cannot afford. Like beautiful stained glass. I'm talking about stained glass windows from churches where it's not just stained glass, but there's scenes of what's, it's like, ooh, if I could, I would have that, something beautiful like that. But they had this Jesus statue, and I can't remember what I paid for, but it was something really inexpensive. It was like either like maybe $35, maybe less, because he doesn't have any arms. And I don't care. I was like, I'll either replace the arms later, or it doesn't really. It kind of gives him, I don't know, gives him a little. Somebody needs to love him. Who else is going to buy him? The arms are missing. I didn't want him to sit in that thrift store forever and everybody overlooking him and nobody taking him home. And because he didn't have the arms, I could afford him. So that's the story if you wanted to see. If you wanted to know why, come to Armless Jesus. LOL. Yeah. Cheeky says you could make him into a bust. Yeah. Or I could put like another cloak on him or something so you couldn't tell. But you can't really tell from this far away anyway that he doesn't have. Jesus is so disarming. It's good for puns. Yeah, I had sympathy for the little statue. I felt like, what? Nobody else is gonna take him home. So that's what happened. Anyway. Okay, you guys, I'll see you on Monday. I hope you have a good weekend. If you are in Mason, Texas, my husband's band is playing this Saturday. There's a big festival happening in Mason, and my husband's whole band's going to be there. Los Diablos Tejanos. So it's him. It's the violinist who's amazing, the drummer out of this world, and the bass player, one of my faves. They're all going to be there. And if you're in, I'm telling you, if you haven't been to Mason, Texas, and you live even just a couple hour or two away, you should come. It's fun. It's like, it's one of these historic town squares. Like Texas has a lot of these beautiful historic town squares. So that's what we're doing this Saturday. I hope to see some of you guys. And otherwise, I'll see you on Monday at 2:00 Central. Take care, guys. Bye.